towards the end of the church year now, we're certainly faced with looking at the reality of eternal life, that there is a heaven. And then right shortly, in the last couple of weeks, the reality that there will be a judgment, and you'll all decide where we're going to go. Tonight we look at the gift or the reality of the resurrection. You know, last week we heard Jesus telling Zacchaeus who would be at his house that day, and said, certainly this is what it is to be a child of God. And as he did so, he noticed he went through Jericho, the first place that the Jews conquered entering into the promised land. Jesus is on the way to the cross. This is also where he is overcoming evil on the way to the promised land. And show now that not just the Jews, but indeed Samaritans and tax collectors and sinners are all having the possibility of salvation and eternal life. Now, tonight we look at more in terms of definitive statements that yes, eternal life does await us. Looking at the first reading, and I really, in some sense, feel sorry for our brothers and sisters who are separated from us, because the first reading is taken from the book of Maccabees. That's one of the books that Martin Luther did away with. That's one taken out of the Bible after it had been there for 1,500 years. And you wonder, well, gee, if you knocked out that book, then based on what the Jews believed, then why not knock out the other books that these Jews here that we hear about tonight did not believe in? Because we're hearing about the Sadducees. And the Sadducees do not accept any of the books of the Bible except for the Pentateuch, the first 5 books. So everything has to be found in those first 5 books, or you don't have to worry about living it. And so these were a very powerful, very conservative group. And in that belief, certainly there was no resurrection. At least they thought so. And that's what they would argue again and again. And so they challenged Jesus about this resurrection. Show us in the Bible. I hear that statement still nowadays. Show us in the Bible. But Jesus took on a challenge that no one else had been able to answer. God, when he talked to Moses, and they believed in Moses, God said, I am the God of Abraham, the God of your father Isaac, the God of Jacob. In other words, I am the God of the living. These guys are still alive. It's like, whoa, that kind of knocked the Sadducees down in terms of that. Because the Pharisees already believed in the resurrection. It was a developing kind of thought. And then we see that as depicted now in Maccabees. Maccabees was written in Greek, but Maccabees again and again shows belief in the resurrection, that there is eternal life. And tonight we see it challenged in terms of, is it automatic? No. Just being a Jew does not make you automatically engaged in eternal life. You have to show a faith in God. And so these 7 Jews, and that's an important number to catch on to again tonight, you hear it both in the first reading and the gospel, did you notice? So 7 is a reminder of God's faithfulness, God's covenant. God is the one who has this union with us, and in that union he promises life. And so we see these brothers being challenged. And if you notice the story, there may have been some real incident where there's 3 or 4 or something killed, but that many, we do know that if a woman had her son circumcised, which they should do at 8 days, the child would be put around her neck and hung, and she would be killed also. So whether this particular story ever happened, we don't know. But the fact that there's 7 there tells us that Maccabees is trying to teach us something. And that is, there is nothing that is worth trading for eternal life. So you hear the story of the hands being cut off and then the tongue being cut off of another one. So all these different, did you ever do that when you were young? Talk about, what would you do to save your mom's life? You go through different scenarios. I know we did. Well, what would you do to make sure you held on to salvation? What could convince you otherwise? And so you start playing this game, kind of like all saints, all martyrs at least have been challenged with it. With the story of the Boxer Rebellion in China, 1900 Boxer Rebellion. The Chinese were basically going to kill anybody who was Christian, wipe them out of the country. And the story is about this school with like 90 young people, and they said, hey, you're going to be allowed to go out that door, and if you will step on the cross that we're going to lay in front of the door, and make fun of it, you can walk away free. And, okay, so 7 young people, one after another, did such. They stepped on the cross and they went on. And then the young girl knelt down by the cross. She stood up and she walked around it. And with that, a shot rang out. But after her, all the rest walked around the cross and were killed. There was the example of one led all of them to their martyrdom. To be a believer in Christ is to be willing to undergo any price, no matter what kind of games we play, mind games. Are you willing to do this or this? It doesn't matter. Whether it's our hands or our tongue, there is nothing that one should trade for the gift of eternal life. And so that becomes the important lesson that we see in Maccabees. And then Jesus simply reaffirms it now for the Sadducees and talking about this another scenario. And you notice they said this woman had 7 husbands, and so they're making fun of Jesus, whose husband, wife will she be when they get to heaven, all 7 of them. But presumably the others also had their first wives as well. So if you just do the logistics, you start thinking, 7? Okay. How close were they born originally? How old are they going to be at this point for all this to happen? It's a story to tell us about life. And of course, for them, it was a temptation of Jesus. But using 7 is a reminder it's God's covenant. And in God's covenant, they could not imagine. They could imagine a man having 7 wives. They could not imagine a woman having more than one husband. That would not be a possibility. That's what throws them off here. It says that's not going to happen. And Jesus said, well, that's not going to be a problem in heaven. In heaven, there is neither male nor female. There is no giving or taking in marriage, because we are all called to a new resurrected body to live forever. And so we simply tonight reaffirm that yes, heaven is real. Salvation is real. You and I will live forever. Thank God we weren't raised up with just the Pentateuch. Thank God we didn't have just the Old Testament up to the point of Maccabees. That the Jews at that point think, well, there is no eternal life. Can you imagine living life and knowing that when you die, that's it? That's all there is? It would make you wonder, how faithful would you be then? How faithful would we be if there were no promise of eternal life? The great news is we know that there is. There's life forever for those who are faithful, who cannot be bought at any price.